Good evening and welcome to World Today, a show where we get you the latest from across the world, analysis with experts and details of everything that is making headlines around the globe. I'm Shreya Upadhyay, and on World Today this evening we'll get you more on the Biden administration's sanctions against Russian officials, the MOUs that have been signed between India and Fiji in the agriculture sector, and the current status of protests against the military coup in Myanmar. This and much more lined up in the next 1 hour, but first let's get you the big news that we are tracking. United States and European Union impose sanctions on senior Russian officials over the poisoning of Alexei Navalny. President Biden's decision reflects a harder stance than taken by his predecessor Donald Trump. Navalny fell ill on a flight in Siberia and was airlifted to Germany, where doctors said he had been poisoned with a nerve agent. Myanmar on the edge. Security forces opened fire on protesters against the military rule. 9 people killed on Wednesday. Ousted President Win Myint faces 2 new charges. US to push for intense UN Security Council talks on Myanmar. Cabinet approves Memorandum of Understanding between India and Fiji for cooperation in the field of agriculture and allied sectors. Also approves Memorandum of Understanding between India and France on renewable energy cooperation. World battles COVID-19. Over 11 crore 54 lakh have contracted COVID-19 globally. Recoveries stand above 9 crore 11 lakh. Virus has claimed over 25 lakh 62,000 lives worldwide. And United Kingdom will receive 10 million AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine doses made by the Serum Institute of India. The institute, which is the world's largest vaccine manufacturer by volume, is mass producing the AstraZeneca vaccine developed with Oxford University for dozens of poor and middle-income countries. All right, let's begin with the big news. Now, in a major setback for Russia, United States and European Union imposed sanctions on senior Russian officials over the poisoning of Alexei Navalny. Now, the sanctions are the first that have been imposed by President Joe Biden's administration. Take a look at what it is all about.
It's a major setback for Russia. US and EU have imposed sanctions on senior Russian officials over the poisoning of opposition leader Alexei Navalny. The United States on March 2 imposed sanctions to punish Russia for what it described as Moscow's attempt to poison opposition leader Alexei Navalny with a nerve agent last year in President Joe Biden's most direct challenge yet to the Kremlin. The sanctions are the first imposed on Russia by the administration of President Joe Biden. He has taken a tougher stance than his predecessor Donald Trump towards President Putin. Under the sanctions, the assets of the officials in the US are frozen.
Today, the United States is announcing sanctions on 7 senior members of the Russian government, an expansion of sanctions under the Chemical and Biological Weapons Control and Warfare Elimination Act, new export restrictions on items that could be used for biological agent and chemical production, and visa restrictions. The intelligence community assesses with high confidence that officers of Russia's Federal Security Service used a nerve agent to poison Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny on August 20th, 2020. The use of any chemical weapon directly violates international legal obligations and norms of civilized conduct, and our actions today fall into a number of categories and reflect a whole of government response. We are also working with Congress to ensure we're faithfully implementing the Chemical and Biological Weapons Act.
The sanctions against 7 senior Russian officials, among them the head of its FSB security service, and on 14 entities, marked a sharp departure from former President Donald Trump's reluctance to confront Russian President Vladimir Putin.
First, the announcement we're making today was done in harmony with the EU announcement. It was not meant to be a silver bullet or an ending to what has been a difficult relationship with Russia. We expect the relationship to continue to be a challenge. We're prepared for that, and we're neither seeking to reset our relations with Russia, nor are we seeking to escalate. There's also an ongoing process, as you know, to consider a number of steps of concerning behavior taken by the Russians that is still ongoing. And we made this announcement because we wanted to do it in a timeline aligned with the European Union, which does send a powerful message. But we're not naive about the challenge. We continue to believe it's a challenging relationship. The president made that clear and made clear what our focus is when he spoke with President Putin, and that review is ongoing. And we, of course, reserve the right to take additional steps and take additional actions at the conclusion.
Psaki defended the decision not to sanction Putin or Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who U.S. intelligence believes approved an operation to capture or kill murdered journalist Jamal Khashoggi in 2018, saying this reflected a need to be able to maintain a relationship moving forward.
There is an ongoing review. We reserve the right to take any additional actions at the conclusion of that review. And just reiterating that the tone and the tenor and the type of relationship that this president intends to have with President Putin will be quite different from the last administration.
Navalny fell ill on a flight in Siberia in August and was airlifted to Germany, where doctors concluded that he had been poisoned with a nerve agent. The Kremlin has denied any role in his illness and said it had seen no proof he was poisoned. Navalny was arrested in January on his return from Germany following treatment for poisoning with what many Western countries say was a military-grade nerve agent. He was jailed on February 2 for parole violations on what he says were politically motivated charges and sent to a penal colony. Bureau Report, World Today Desk, DD India.
All right, before we go to analyzing what this really means for the US-Russia relations, let me just get you a brief history of what this case is all about and who really Alexei Navalny is. Who is Navalny? Well, in 2008, Alexei Navalny started blogging about the alleged malpractice and corruption at Russian state-controlled corporations. He's also a lawyer and he's also a leader of a political party there that opposes President Vladimir Putin's party. So he began in 2008 when he started blogging about the alleged malpractice. Now, in August 2020, Navalny was hospitalized after he was poisoned with a nerve agent and he was medically evacuated to Berlin and he spent about 5 months there for recovery. Now, what is this poisoning attack all about? Navalny accuses President Vladimir Putin of ordering Federal Security Service, or the FSB, which is the security agency of Russia, to carry out the attack on him with Novichok, which is a nerve agent. This is what he alleges that the Russian president did. But Kremlin repeatedly denies this allegation, and President Putin alleges that Navalny, quote-unquote, relies on the support of U.S. special services. So really, there's a tussle going on between the president and Navalny. Now, on 17 January this year, 2021, he returned to Russia, where he was immediately detained on accusations of violating parole conditions of an earlier case of 2014. And here, when he was arrested, he was sent to a penal colony in Vladimir Oblast. So that really has invited a lot of Western condemnation. Western nations and nations across the globe have really said that this is something that Russia should not be doing, and they should release him as soon as possible. Now, let's get my guest on the show today, and we will discuss with him what this really means for the US-Russia relations. I'm joined by Mr. Ravi Joshi, who's the visiting fellow at ORF. Mr. Joshi, thanks very much for joining us on DD India. President Biden's first sanctions against Russian officials really setting the tone straight, firm, and a harder stance than, of course, his predecessor, Donald Trump, and really setting the tone for the US-Russia relations from now on.
Yes, in a way, you are right in saying that President Joe Biden and his administration has always insisted on democracy and human rights as the values that will guide its administration, especially in the foreign policy field. And so sanctioning Russia on this issue of Alexei Navalny's poisoning looks quite in line with that thinking. But the point is, you must remember that the US-Russian relations are also extremely strategically important for both countries on other areas like Iran and North Korea. So the sanctions are mild and are revocable, and though Russia has said that these sanctions are hostile and that they will reciprocate, though not symmetrically, the issue that is to be noted here is that the sanctions have been rather mild, and I'm sure that they could be revoked in times of need, in terms of U.S. need of Russia.
But Mr. Joshi, do you really think they will be revoked, considering the fact that US-Russia relations have always had this tussle between them? Do you think they will be revoked in the near future?
No, I'm not so optimistic to say that they will be revoked in the near future. But what I'm saying is that Biden's policies, if you look back at what he has done to Saudi Arabia on the Jamal Khashoggi murder case, he resisted the temptation to name Mohammed bin Salman as guilty of ordering the murder. So Joe Biden is giving leeway for him to operate in both cases. He needs Saudi Arabia to handle the entire West Asian situation, to insist on them to stop the war in Yemen and to reconcile with Iran on its nuclear deal. And he needs Russia again to see that the deal with Iran, which was signed in 2015 under the JCPOA, is absolutely now back to focus. And both US and Iran can make progress, which has been one of the positive indications already coming from the Foreign Ministry or the Secretary of State in US.
Mr. Joshi, like you said, that Russia has said that they will react on the basis of reciprocity and not really symmetrically. But you're saying that, Joe Biden is really sort of, playing safe, if we can say that. But do you think Russia really understands that?
Yes, Russia definitely understands that. And, there are always indications which give away whether the state or whether any particular state is closing its options or leaving its options open. And in this case, I feel that, though they have sanctioned 7 senior officials, including the FSB director Alexander Bortnikov, they have not yet sanctioned any important cabinet minister of the Putin's government. And Sergei Lavrov is free to travel to Washington and New York anytime he wants. And I'm sure Anthony Blinken and Sergei Lavrov will meet sometime soon, and they will sort out the issue. And, Alexei Navalny has been a lightning rod for all the anti-Putin protesters and pro-democracy protesters in Russia. And there's no doubt about it. And he is one pro-democracy champion whom Joe Biden can rely as a hope for Russia. And so they would like to send out a signal to both Alexei Navalny and his supporters and to the Russian government that we will not let you go beyond this particular line. You cannot go on crushing all your opponents. And this is not the first time that Russia has used a Novichok nerve agent on its opponents. It has already killed, there was this Sergei Skripal was another FSB agent on whom Novichok was used, but fortunately he survived because of the quick action taken by Scotland Yard. And I'm sure Russia is also learning that this is not the way to treat its dissidents. And I'm sure that both Russia and US will find a common ground to come back because they have so much more at stake on strategic matters.
And Mr. Joshi, we know that, when US and China had that trade war, we had big impacts on various, aspects around the world. With US and Russia relations, always going through this tussle, and now with these new sanctions and, of course, the new global order, what do you think will be the impact?
Let me start with your last sentence, the new global order. There is definitely a more positive role being visualized for the US after Donald Trump's exit. And Joe Biden's arrival has been seen as a back to the old classic period of transatlantic partnership between US and Europe, and then certain back to rule of law in the international sphere. And order-based law in the norm, becoming the norms in the international relations will help the entire world. And actually, it was Donald Trump who had disrupted this world order, and Joe Biden is coming back to restart where Obama had left. And as far as U.S.-China relations is concerned, we all know that how Donald Trump took it to a point of no return. The trade war between U.S. and China almost took a proportion which was shaking up the entire world trade order. And Joe Biden will now try to reverse that and try to understand what are the U.S. interests and how far the U.S. interests can be maintained while keeping China within the rule-based international order. And similar will be his attempt towards Russia. And one very important thing is that the US and the EU are now acting together,
Yes.
which had already, there was a rupture in the relations during Donald Trump's period.
So that obviously giving out another signal that United States is, going to go back and mend its ties with the European Union. But just to go back, to your answer of the new global order, how do you see India's role here? What is the lens through which India should see this whole situation?
As far as India is concerned, there has been certain apprehensions in the media in India that Joe Biden's advocacy of democracy and human rights will put a strain on the India-US relationship, which had reached a very high level of bonhomie during Trump and Modi's relationship. That is no longer the situation, and Joe Biden is unlikely to be as friendly to India as Trump was, whose basic policy was that as long as you buy arms from US, I do not interfere in your internal affairs. That was Trump's policy, whether it is Saudi Arabia or whether it is India. So that policy will no longer be valid, and Joe Biden will insist on certain value-based judgments and guidelines to dictate his foreign policy. But India has to accept it, and it will not be difficult for us to continue our relationship because there are so many other points at which we synergize. Absolutely. And I don't see a great amount of stress and strain, but there will be certain pinpricks.
Of course, and big defense partners there too, US and Russia with India. But Mr. Joshi, we're not experts of warfare, but if I could just ask you about the NBC warfare that is at play here, nuclear, biological and chemical warfare, and how, it's not really new. It has been used since the time Soviet Union actually introduced it. But how far do you think, it poses a big threat to, across the world?
Look, as far as NBC warfare is concerned, Russia was not the only country which has done it, and US has done it, has provided nerve agents to that yellow poison gas, to mustard gas, to Saddam Hussein, who used it on the Kurdish community in Iraq. So there has been NBC warfare indulged in by both the superpowers. And there has to be an agreement between the two of them to stop the use, which is extremely destructive. And during Trump's last year in office, he actually broke away from the START treaty with Russia, which now reopens the entire can of worms on the nuclear missiles issue, because there is no more a bilateral pact between the two superpowers on nuclear missiles and nuclear weapons. And so we are back to a world of rather disorderly nature and not exactly chaotic, but an order which is not entirely regulated.
All right, Mr. Joshi, before I wrap up this discussion, the last question, where do you see the road ahead, whether it's mild or strong sanctions, or, US and Russia both being aware that these can be revoked and things can, be mended. Where do you see the US-Russia relations heading now?
There has to be a realization in the US, particularly in the Congress and the Senate members, that sanctions has never had a desired effect upon any country with which you are dealing. US has been sanctioning countries for the last 2 or 3 decades, and Iran has been sanctioned for almost more than 2 decades, and the objective of the sanctions, that is changing the regime, has not happened in Iran, and it will not happen. And the same thing is true in Russia. If you think that you can change the behavior of a nation by sanctioning its government or its people, you are not going to achieve your desired objective of either changing the regime or mending its behavior. So sanctions have no future. That's the first and foremost point that US has to realize. And this realization has come in the academic community of the US, but the governments still are stuck in the old groove of old habits. Now, as far as Russia is concerned, I'm sure that Putin would definitely encourage and welcome a warming up relationship between EU and Russia in the first phase, because there is a huge amount of gas stakes between Russia and Germany in the Nord Stream gas pipeline, which Russia and Germany are building, which was actually put on sanctions by Donald Trump in December 2019. And the Swiss company, which was involved in the construction of the pipeline, has stopped work. This is going to be a major hurting phenomena, and this will hurt the economy of Russia. But that is why Russia wants Europe to be seen as a partner in its own growth, economic growth and development. And US also must encourage this partnership between between Russia and EU, and also build up its own bilateral relationship with Russia. So I see in the not so distant future a warming up of relations or an acceptance of fact between Russia and US that they have to unite on Iran and North Korea and other major hotspots that are going to emerge in the next years to come.
All right, we'll have to see how that pans out. Mr. Ravi Joshi, thank you very much for joining us on DD India in World Today with all those analysis of the US-Russia relations. Now, moving on back home, the Union Cabinet was apprised of the signing of Memorandum of Understanding between India and French Republic in the field of renewable energy cooperation. The MOU was signed in January 2021. Now, the objective of the MOU is to establish the basis for promotion of bilateral cooperation in the field of new and renewable energy on the basis of mutual benefit, equality and reciprocity. Now, it covers technologies relating to solar, wind, hydrogen and biomass energy. This MOU will help in the development of technological know-how in the field of renewable energy and thereby aid the process of attaining the ambitious target of 450 gigawatts of installed renewable energy capacity by 2030. Now, the Union Cabinet also approved the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding between the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare of the Republic of India and Ministry of Agriculture of the Republic of Fiji for cooperation in the field of agriculture and allied sectors. The MOU between India and Fiji provides for cooperation in the following areas. On your screens, the MOU between the two countries provides for cooperation in exchange of research, personnel, scientific experts, specialists and technical trainees, enhancement and transfer of technology, development of infrastructure for agriculture development, development of human resources through training of officers and farmers by conducting seminars and workshops, promotion of joint ventures between private sectors of both the countries, promotion of investment in marketing and value addition, downstream processing of agricultural commodities, promoting capacity development in all areas of agriculture, promotion of direct trade of agriculture products through market access, joint planning and development of research proposals and execution of research projects and programs, establishment of Indo-Fiji working group for dealing with phytosanitary issues and any other form of cooperation which will be mutually agreed by the parties. Now, under the MOU, a joint working group will be constituted to set down procedures and plan and recommend programs of cooperation towards achieving its aims through the executing agencies of the two countries. The grouping will hold its meeting alternately in India and Fiji once in every 2 years. This MOU will come into effect on the date of its signing and will remain in force for a period of 5 years. And for more on this, I'm joined by my colleague Abhishek Jha. Abhishek, good evening. Very important MOUs there between India and Fiji and India and France. I'll come to India and Fiji first because that's in the agriculture sector, and we know that Fiji, one of the largest sectors in their economy is agriculture, with sugarcane and coconut being their major cash products, cash crops. So, important agriculture MOU there, really helping, farmers of both the countries.
Of course, India has like these two cash crops that actually mentioned, it's sugar cane or the coconut, has been one of the staple of farmers in various states of India as well, especially in coastal region. So India has had in the past experience of utilizing the maximum of these cash crops and diversified its product line into various sectors so that the farmers' income could be improved. If we take example of coconut, from coconut to there is a specially constituted coir board in India which takes care of all the wastages that otherwise would have been from the coconut, and that is made into a kind of product. And then we have also seen a certain fashionable product that comes out of coconut, and how these small innovations have actually helped farmers improve their income. Implicating these same systems and innovation in Fiji could also give some benefit to the farmers, and they can especially give certain economic empowerment also to the farmers. Talking about sugarcane also, India has improved its capacity in sugarcane production. In fact, we are surplus in sugarcane production and sugar production now, and so some quantity of sugar production is also being diverted to ethanol production, and we know that now with mixing with petroleum products, ethanol is also being produced. Ethanol is actually also being utilized while mixing with fuel and to give more efficiency and making it cheaper also. So these innovation can also be translated into other part of the world. While having agreed on these MOU, India and Fiji are actually collaborating in that direction, where India's innovation, India's expertise and India's technical advancement can be implied in Fiji, which can help in economic empowerment and prosperity of farmers in Fiji.
Abhishek, let's shift our focus to the MOU between India and France. There on renewable energy, India's commitment again reiterated, for a cleaner, healthier environment and use of resources optimally. So there, an important MOU there between the two countries in the area of renewable energy as well.
Okay, of course, we know it has been a process in the past few years that India and France have come together in so many fields, from strategic affairs to defense to this climate change scenario also, and sustainable growth model also that Indian Prime Minister and his French counterpart are also trying to advocate. In fact, India and France are celebrating Indo-French Year of Environment this year. Recently, French Minister for Environment was in India, where she had a discussion with Indian counterpart Prakash Javadekar, and India and France discussed how they can collaborate on the issues of climate change and what are the areas which needs to be discussed and focused so that a sustainable mode of growth can be implemented, and renewable energy is one of the key factor in that sustainable growth momentum, because that is one energy which not only reduces carbon footprint but also makes environment cleaner, greener and economically cheaper also. But of course there are certain technological advancement that is needed in India. We need mass level of technology that can be cheaper also, and French and other European countries also, in fact, they have certain expertise in producing those electrovoltaic solar cells. So India can partner with these countries so that those mass production of cells, mass production of technology can happen at such a level which can help in reducing the overall carbon footprint of the globe. In fact, India and France, they have been the founder member of International Solar Alliance also. That was also one of the vision of Prime Minister Modi. So we have seen how these two countries have come together in collaboration in various sectors, where from renewable energy sectors to climate change to climate diversity to biodiversity, to cooperate and strongly advocate sustainable growth momentum. And this today's MOU is also one in that direction.
All right, Abhishek Jha, thanks very much for joining us with those inputs on the two important MOUs that have been signed between India and France on renewable energy and India and Fiji in the field of agriculture and allied sectors. Now, moving on, Myanmar's political crisis is far from ending, it seems, as ousted President Win Myint faces 2 new charges. Now, with strikes and protests impacting businesses and disrupting the normal life in Myanmar capital, what's really the current status in the country? Here's a report.
There seems to be no end to the political crisis in Myanmar. Security forces opened fire on protests against military rule on Wednesday, killing 9 people according to witnesses and media. The death toll is rising day by day. Protests are being witnessed even when neighboring countries have called for restraint and offered to help Myanmar resolve the crisis. The strikes and protests in cities across Myanmar have impacted local businesses and people's normal life in the past month since the Southeast Asian nation declared enforcement of the state of emergency. The ousted President Win Myint is facing 2 new charges, including a breach of the constitution that is punishable by up to 3 years in prison. Win Myint was arrested on 1st February along with Myanmar's leader Aung San Suu Kyi just hours before the military seized power in a coup. Win Myint is also facing charges over violating protocols to stop the spread of coronavirus. US Ambassador to the United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield said on 1st March she hopes to use Washington's presidency of the United Nations Security Council in March to push for more intense discussions on Myanmar.
And the U.S. is committed to using our renewed engagement here in New York, but internationally, to press the military to reverse its actions and restore a democratically elected government. But the violence we're seeing happening now does not indicate that they're ready to make that what I would consider easy decision for them to make. So we do have to ramp up the pressure. The Security Council, I was pleased, expressed in a unanimous press statement its concerns about the situation in Burma. So that's a sign that we can come together and cooperate in areas where it matters. So I hope to use our time as president of the council to push for more intense discussions on that issue.
The Security Council voiced concern in a statement last month over a state of emergency imposed by the Myanmar military for 1 year, but stopped short of condemning the coup due to opposition by Russia and China. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has pledged to mobilize global pressure to overturn the coup. Bureau Report, World Today Desk, DD India.
So far from ending there, the political crisis in Myanmar. Now moving on, let's now take a look at the COVID numbers from across the world. Now, so far, over 11 crore 54 lakh people have contracted COVID-19 globally, while the tally of recoveries stands above 9 crore 11 lakh 95,000. The viral disease has claimed over 25 lakh 62,000 lives worldwide. United States continues to remain the worst affected from COVID-19, where more than 2 crore 93 lakh 70,000 cases of COVID-19 have been reported. Now, the country's fatalities have crossed 5 lakh 29,000, followed by Brazil, which has registered over 2 lakh 57,000 deaths. United Kingdom will receive 10 million AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine doses made by the Serum Institute of India. The UK government has said in a statement on Tuesday. Now remember, the Serum Institute of India, which is the world's largest vaccine manufacturer by volume, is mass producing the AstraZeneca vaccine developed with Oxford University for dozens of poor and middle income countries. A slew of low and middle income countries ranging from Bangladesh to Brazil are dependent on the institute's AstraZeneca vaccine branded Covishield. But demand has been growing from Western countries as well. It is also providing doses to the COVAX program backed by the World Health Organization and Gavi vaccine alliance. In other news, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris virtually delivered her first keynote address at the House Democratic Caucus's annual retreat. Democratic members of the House of Representatives will reconvene on Wednesday to discuss their legislative priorities, including health care and immigration. Vice President Kamala Harris said that inequality has become the norm and pandemic has been an accelerator.
We have the opportunity to get millions more shots in our arms, to send out millions of $1,400 checks to the people who need them, to save millions of jobs through small business relief, to safely reopen millions of schools. And again, today the President talked about the priority around vaccinations for teachers. But we have a historic opportunity to lift up 1 in 3 Black Americans and Latino Americans, and to lift half of the children who live in poverty out of poverty. Think about that. Half of the children in America who are living in poverty won't be if we see this thing through. The truth is, inequity has become the norm, and the pandemic has been an accelerator.
Keeping with news from United States, Texas will lift its mask mandate and allow businesses to reopen at full capacity next week. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said that it is now time to open Texas 100%. He added that with increased vaccinations and improved treatment for COVID, the state was in a far better position now. The new executive order will take effect on the 10th of March. However, the administration of U.S. President Joe Biden has made it clear that coronavirus restrictions are still necessary. Texas, remember, is the largest U.S. state to end its mask mandate. It has recorded over 43,000 deaths related to COVID-19, which is the 3rd highest state toll in the United States.
Effective next Wednesday, all businesses of any type are allowed to open 100%. That includes any type of entity in Texas. Also, I am ending the statewide mask mandate.
Now, just hours after Texas announced reopening all businesses and ending the mask mandate, President Joe Biden said that there is light at the end of the tunnel, but we cannot let our guard down now. Speaking with reporters, he said that he hopes that life in the United States will be back to normal by March of next year, but urged the public to remain vigilant about coronavirus.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. But we cannot let our guard down now or assure that victory is inevitable. We can't assume that. We must remain vigilant, act fast and aggressively, and look out for one another. That's how we're going to get ahead of this virus, get our economy going again, and get back to our loved ones. So thank you, and please, please, it's not over yet. Great news, but stay vigilant.
Now, Biden also announced that Merck and Company will help make rival Johnson & Johnson's single-shot COVID-19 vaccine a partnership similar to those seen during World War II. Now, Johnson & Johnson's vaccine production has been slower than promised, and the Biden administration pushed the deal to try to improve the output. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said the United States government will invoke the Defense Production Act in order to equip Merck's plants to be able to produce the Johnson & Johnson's vaccine. Under its contract, Johnson & Johnson was supposed to deliver 12 million doses by the end of February, but had less than 4 million ready to ship when the vaccine was authorized on Saturday. It expects to be able to deliver another 16 million doses by the end of the month. However, the company said it will be able to provide the full 100 million doses it has agreed to supply by its original mid-year deadline.
There's a difference between conversations and it moving forward and the use of the Defense Production Act, which is something this president and not the prior president committed to invoking, and also the commitment to help upgrade the help get the manufacturing facilities to the place where they needed to be in order to produce the vaccines. So I'm only conveying what got it across the finish line, and I think it's clear that that has only happened relatively recently.
Moving on, a year after Brazil's COVID-19 outbreak began, the virus has killed over 2,55,000 Brazilians. Yet little over 3% of the 210 million population has been vaccinated, raising criticism of President Jair Bolsonaro for failing to secure timely supplies of vaccines. Now, last week was the deadliest yet for Brazil's outbreak, averaging nearly 1,200 confirmed deaths per day, according to the Health Ministry data. Now, intensive care units in the country's main cities have reached critical occupancy levels not seen since the first peak of the pandemic last July. State governors have again adopted restrictions limiting all but essential services, including in Brazil's capital city, Brasilia, which decreed a 24-hour lockdown. Ghana, meanwhile, has begun inoculating its population against COVID-19 after receiving 6 lakh doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. People were seen lining up outside the regional hospital in Ghana's capital, Accra, to get the jab. The West African country, Ghana, is administering COVID-19 vaccines to health workers and frontline workers first. Ghana, remember, was the first country to receive the vaccines under COVAX, which is a global initiative for vaccine access aiming to deliver more than 1.3 billion vaccine doses to over 90 low and middle income countries by the end of the year. Now, only a handful of other African countries have started inoculations with doses purchased bilaterally or received as donations. Coronavirus infections in Ghana have surpassed 84,000 and more than 600 people have died so far. Made in India COVID-19 vaccines landed in Kigali, which is the capital city of Rwanda, today. All right, after that, let's take a look at what all other stories are making headlines across the globe.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with the first United Arab Emirates ambassador to Israel, Mohammed Al-Khaja, in Jerusalem. Al-Khaja, who is on a 3-day visit to Israel, arrived on Monday and has pledged to build up new bilateral relations. The two leaders discussed the potential in developing joint regional and bilateral projects in a broad range of fields. Google is teaming up with 2 global insurers to cover cyber breaches and related risks for businesses that use its cloud services. The first time a major provider has opened up such insurance to its clients. Major insurers have been treading carefully on cyber risks for years, but the tie-up between Google, Alliance and Munich Re gives the insurers special access to data to see what controls are in place at clients' firms to help them price the risk. The insurers, both headquartered in Munich, will cover up to $50 million in potential losses. In Afghanistan, 3 women who worked for a TV station in Jalalabad have been shot dead in what seems to be the latest in a wave of targeted killings. Reports say the women, aged between 18 to 20, were killed in 2 separate but coordinated attacks. A 4th was critically hurt. Police said they arrested a lead gunman linking him to the Taliban. However, the group has denied any involvement. In United States, California, at least 15 people were killed in a collision between an SUV and a tractor-trailer truck in the southern part of the city. The crash involved a sport utility vehicle carrying 27 people and a truck hauling gravel. Some 14 people died at the scene while another person died at the hospital. Other passengers of the vehicle are getting treatment at the hospital. Panama's consul Thelma Barea Pinzon in Colombia died when the vehicle she was traveling in was swept away by strong river currents. She died alongside 2 other people she was traveling with, her husband, Pedro Cantillo Ramirez, and colleague Nonania Garcia Losada. She was en route from the department of Huila to the south of the country. 2 other people inside the vehicle survived. Authorities said they were swept away by strong river currents while trying to cross. Dramatic video from Bolivia captured the moment a balcony railing collapsed at El Alto Public University, killing at least 5 people. Video footage of the horrific accident showed a large group of students gathered on a crowded balcony when the railing gives way and students fall, some to their deaths. According to local officials, 8 people fell when the railing collapsed. 5 were pronounced dead at the scene, while 3 others were transferred to local hospitals. World Today Desk, DD India.
All right, now let's turn the pages of history and see what major events took place on this day in our segment Today in History.
It was on March 3rd in 1831 when George M. Pullman, who invented the railway sleeping car, was born in New York in United States. American industrialist Pullman invented a luxurious railroad coach designed for overnight travel. It was on this day in 1847 when Alexander Graham Bell, the Scottish-born American inventor of the telephone, was born in Edinburgh, United Kingdom. He secured exclusive rights to the technology and launched the Bell Telephone Company in 1877. Ultimately, the talented scientist held more than 18 patents for his inventions and work in communications. On March 3rd in 1887, Annie Sullivan began teaching 6-year-old Helen Keller, who had lost her sight and hearing following a severe illness. Often called the miracle worker, Sullivan's touch teaching techniques helped Keller graduate from college and become an international lecturer and activist. Sullivan remained by her side until Keller's death in 1936. It was in the year 1931 on March 3rd when the United States adopted the Star-Spangled Banner as the country's national anthem. By the time it became the national anthem, it had been one of America's most popular patriotic tunes for more than a century. The American national anthem was written by attorney Francis Scott Key, who had a thriving practice in Washington, D.C. On March 3rd in 1996, French writer Marguerite Duras died at the age of 81. Among her best-known works was the screenplay for Hiroshima Mon Amour. She also wrote as well as directed the 1975 film adaptation of her play India Song, which offers a static, moody portrayal of the wife of French ambassador in Calcutta and her several lovers. World Today Desk, DD India.
And now here is your daily fix of offbeat, funny and unique stories in our segment Beyond Headlines.
Australia's Taronga Conservation Society has announced to establish a world's first platypus refugee facility. The facility will have the capacity to house 65 platypus at a time and will be built by 2022. Platypus are elusive Australian animals that spend most of their time underwater. The animals with webbed feet are 75-year-old Nancy Van der Stratum hops into the ring to practice non-contact boxing in a bid to battle severe symptoms of Parkinson's disease. 6 years after her diagnosis, the Belgian woman who lives in Turkey discovered the benefits of non-contact boxing by chance while researching the disease. Ever since, she has been perfecting her punching by going to a gym 3 times a week. Non-contact boxing does not. A UK startup has developed a glove with a built-in spinning gyroscope that it says can help people with Parkinson's disease and essential tremor overcome their often right as long as it's spinning. Makes your hand stay level while flywheel is spinning, both even impossible. Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa is searching for 8 people to join him as the first private passengers on a trip around the moon with Elon Musk's SpaceX. He had originally planned to invite artists for the week-long voyage, slated for 2023. The first stage of the selection process runs to March 14, with applicants needing to pass medical checks and eventually an interview with Maezawa. Nestled in a steep rocky hillside among the remote mountains of northern Iraq, the Rabban Homizad monastery has watched invaders come and go through Christianity's tumultuous history. Monks have sacked, surrounded or occupied the 7th century monastery and the Christian town of Al-Kosh, above which it perches, near the borders with Turkey, Syria and Iran. Now residents and local Christians regularly make the winding hike up to the monastery. The prized shepherd of the Turkmen carpet has become one of the most visited historical and cultural attractions of people, attracting a large number of people who respect the national carpet art. Scientists, experts, carpet weavers and tourists opened in Ashgabat, Shepa, symbolizing the unchanging significance of this unique ancient art rooted in the depths of 5,000-year-old history of the people who created it, and is evidence of the spiritual values inherited by the ancestors of the present generation of Turkmens. In Germany, a clothing store, Ewig in Bad Küsnacht, is helping brides-to-be to get their wedding gowns made in times of coronavirus when many others are closing shops. The shop allows women to purchase the dress with an appointment. The store makes wedding gowns on the basis of various designs available on the internet in accordance with the client's demand. Greenpeace's ship Arctic Sunrise left the Seychelles for its first expedition to the Saya de Malha Bank, an area which has the largest seagrass meadow in the world and is a leading candidate to be one of the first high-seas marine protected areas to be established under the Global Ocean Treaty. According to the experts at Greenpeace, Saya de Malha Bank, in an area of the Indian Ocean that is very poorly understood, the waters of the Saya de Malha Bank are also likely to provide habitat cetaceans including humpback and sperm whales. In India, forest officials have rescued a huge Burmese python from an industrial waste pipe. The python strayed from its natural habitat nearby and got stuck in the pipe, was eventually rescued after 3 hours of efforts. The forest department official said rescuers would release the snake into Bekuntapur forest. Hungarians have taken to making tasty treats for ambulance workers after Esther Harmat, a mother of 2, began her My Quarantine Kitchen in order to provide food for the ambulance workers working day and night during the pandemic. The idea has turned into a nationwide movement. World Today Desk, DD India.
Well, on that note, it's a wrap on World Today, but news and updates continue on DD India. Next up is my colleague Anil Thomas with Express News. Do stay in. Namaskar.